Today we are going to go over practical pitch design and how it is different than what traditional pitch design is. Now, before I get into it, traditional pitch design is not necessarily a negative thing. I just think it's missing a big part of the picture of overall pitch design when it comes to problem solving and getting out. Now, first we need to ask the question, what is traditional pitch design? Usually they take a look at a pitcher's arsenal in a vacuum. So you can think of Rapsodo movement plots, TrackMan movement plots, spin efficiency, spin rate, just looking at the general movement of everything, not even really looking at how it faces against hitters, what hitters see from each pitch, just how it looks. It's literally just how it moves. Maybe they get into BAA and some of those other details, but again, it's just data in a vacuum is what it usually looks at. When they get into problem solving portion of this as to what to do, whether we need to develop a pitch or do we need to create a completely new pitch to add to the arsenal. They're going to utilize tech for this, which again, it's good, it's helpful to have that information, but again, it's just in a vacuum. Now, what is wrong with this traditional pitch design approach? Right now, it is a good tool to have, and it usually does more good than harm. The main problem with it is that it is decontextualized to what they're going to do in a game, right? It usually consists of throwing the same pitch over and over and over and over again until they get it down, and it's like, okay, we got it, let's move on. We don't know what a hitter is going to do with that pitch, so if there's not a stand-in or like no real feedback from an opponent, we don't really know if it's a good pitch or not. We can just look at the movement plot and say, yep, that looks good, but we don't know if it is. Now again, it's not all bad. Now, what is practical pitch design? So the beginning process of this is very similar to traditional pitch design as to just looking at the arsenal. However, I'm gonna ask questions is, do any of these pitches get you more swings and misses? What pitches get you bad contact? What pitch do you feel like you're missing? Getting an understanding of the pitcher themselves, but also getting an idea of what pitches do we not want to mess with because hitters have a tough time hitting it, right? We need to understand the complete picture before we either add a new pitch or try and develop one. Now, once we start to design this pitch, whether it's improving or creating a new one, we need to add some kind of context. Context is dependent on the pitcher and their skill level, and if it's a new pitch or if it's one that they've already been throwing, we're just making some tweaks. It's going to depend. Big part of this is, again, when we're adding context, is I'm going to ask way more questions than I am going to interject answers for. What types of questions would I ask in this process? First one is, why do we need to add a new pitch? Or why do we need to make this one better, right? Usually it's going to be, well, all my pitches move a certain way. We need to create something different. Okay, cool. I can get that because now we can add some deception to the hitters instead of just like, oh, I just want to throw a changeup just to throw a changeup. Well, we need to figure out, what does this changeup need to do? Another question I'm going to ask is, how does it perform? Another question is, how do you currently use what you already have? What pitches are you using to get outs? What pitches are you using to get strikes when you absolutely need it? What is your swing and miss pitch? How are we using everything within context? Now, this is crucial. When adding a new pitch, what is the intentionality behind it, right? Do we need a pitch that gets you more swings and misses? Do we need a pitch that you can just get over the plate to kind of get guys in between timing? So a cutter would be a great pitch for that. You have your fastball, you have your slow off speed. Now you need something in the middle to have 3 different speeds, and now we can throw them off and we can get it in the zone, and that pitch is protected because you have 2 other speeds on either end of the spectrum there. Again, add the deception. But what is the intentionality behind it? Or are we also looking for something that can get you a ground ball in a crucial situation? Like, what is the intentionality behind this pitch we're developing? Now, how do we apply this practical pitch design with our athletes, right? Because it's great to get into the theory of why all these things are important, but also we need to understand like how to apply this. We can't just be like, oh, throw this up and in. No, why are we throwing it up and in? What's the point of throwing this up and in? How can we set up this pitch to be effective up and in now that we have it, right? We need to start diving into those things and applying these ideas to make it just at the very least logical, instead of just throw this 10 times in a row until you got it and then we move on. No, we need to understand what this pitch is going to do. Now, continuing on to how we apply this, as a coach, we need to get as much information as we can. So maybe have them throw this pitch in different parts of the zone from pitch to pitch to get an understanding of how it's going to move differently in different parts of the zone. Does he throw this pitch harder or slower in certain parts? Does it move more or less in certain parts of the zone? Or is it more effective maybe out of the zone? We need to get as much information as possible so that we can help educate the pitcher as to how to use this either new pitch or improved pitch. Another thing on application is to be intentional. I mentioned the intentionality behind each pitch earlier, but when we get into being intentional with each pitch, we need to set up situations, set up context. If you don't have a hitter, give them something like, hey, on the third pitch of this sequence, I want you to use this cutter to get a broken bat. So they need to have something that can miss barrels to be effective, right? Or maybe if they're developing a new changeup, I want you to set up this changeup to get a swing and miss on the third or fourth, or maybe once you get to 2 strikes, set up a changeup to get a swing and miss, right? Start adding context, start being intentional with what you're trying to do with this new pitch. Because when you add context, you add pressure, and you're gonna get a better idea of what this pitch is going to do once this athlete gets into the game. And there is real pressure, right? Now, nothing prepares you for a game like a game. So we can only take them so far, but we want to take them as far as we can to be able to get this new pitch ready for game time. Now, a big idea behind all of this is that the pitcher needs to understand how to use this pitch. Again, whether it's a new one or an improved one, they need to understand that. So we need to make sure we're applying all of these ideas, getting them to understand how to set it up, where to throw it in or out of the zone, and just basically what that pitch is going to be used for. They need to understand that on their own, so when they leave us and then go to their season or go to their team, they know how to use it and they're prepared. Now, something big in the pitching community is creating a feel, right? So when it comes to practical pitch design, how do we create feel if our focus is so much on getting outs and we don't really focus on feeling the ball? Well, we need to get them to problem solve. Now, before we get into maybe the intentionality of things, if they're struggling to get a feel for this pitch, right? Maybe it moves well on the TrackMan plot. They have no clue where it's going. Or maybe they have really good command with it, but the movement just isn't quite there. Maybe it's too similar to a different pitch. Something that we can do is just make sure that they don't throw the same pitch 2 times in a row, or every other pitch they throw this new one that they're learning. So they can go back and forth from pitch to pitch to be able to create feel and to be able to problem solve and make sure that they can switch their intention depending on what pitch they throw. Because they're throwing the same one over and over and over again. It's the same intention. They don't actually have to change anything. They're just trying to repeat it over and over again. Well, in a game, like, yes, you will throw pitches back to back, probably quite often, depending on what pitch it is and how good of a pitch it is. But at the same time, you're not throwing it 10 times in a row very often. Very few pitchers have done that. So we need to be able to adjust from pitch to pitch on the fly. So that's another practical way to help them create feel. Another way to create feel is having a stand-in hitter. It's super simple, and it doesn't even have to be a real hitter, just somebody to stand in the box. It doesn't even have to be close to the plate, but somewhere down there to give feedback. Like, hey, I thought this pitch was going to do this, but last second it moved the other direction. It's deceptive. Or, hey, that pitch is terrible. That's going to get hit, right? Just having that kind of feedback so then that the pitcher knows, oh, it felt like this coming out of the hand. Maybe I need to make an adjustment here so it's not as easy to hit, or it's not as slow, or it's not as flat, or whatever the problem might be. Now, some final thoughts here when it comes to practical pitch design. Again, these are pretty rough outlines and guidelines as to how to execute this. We have to remember that each athlete is going to be different. So how we apply these ideas is going to look different from athlete to athlete because no 2 athletes are the same. So just being able to adjust on the fly, pivot, change grips, change pitches, or maybe we decide that they don't need to create a new one. We just need to make sure the 3 that they have are dialed in, right? Every guy is going to be different. You need to be able to adjust as coaches. Now, if you're interested in working with me, hit up mashremote.com, check out our website, learn a little bit more about it. Go ahead and fill out the remote athlete application, and we'll get set up for a phone call and see if we're a good fit.